This is Dan Schneider. On this Dan Schneider video interview, the subject is Toonrific Tariq. It is a YouTube channel run by Al-Tariq, the man that you see before you, and we'll be talking about his channel and the cartoons that he loves. Toonrific Tariq is a YouTube channel. It's only been on for a couple of years, maybe even less than a couple of years, and I came across it while just stumbling across some old cartoons that I love. And it's run by a young man named Al-Tariq. He's before you, and like I like to do with all my guests, I want to find out a little bit more about them before we talk about the channel. So welcome, Tariq. Can you just give a little bit, a couple of minutes about who you are? I know you did a video called Miseducation of Al-Tariq, but if you can just condense that a little bit, who you are and why you love cartoons so much.
Yeah, nah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm Al-Tariq Harris. I've been into animation my entire life. Fascinated by it. Always been drawing and everything like that. I started the channel when I was 14, but I didn't really take it too seriously until I was maybe, I want to say I was 21. Yeah, is when I started to take it seriously, when I did the How to Black video on analysis on Black cartoon characters. And I kind of used the channel as sort of like an animation appreciation channel. I'll focus on the things that I like, things that I have personal connections to, because I feel like that not only does that help shape the perception of animation and give it more of a bigger view than just like the blanket look of, oh, kids, it's just for kids, but also it you kind of watch these videos all the time of people kind of hyperbolizing and saying like, oh, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, this is the worst thing everybody should lose their jobs, whatever. And I mean, like, that stuff is kind of fun to do, I guess, but at the same time, it can be just as fun to appreciate something. And animation is really beautiful and it's really impactful and it's really powerful. So I feel like it definitely needs a lot of love.
So being someone who's about college age, I noticed that probably 80% of your videos are about what would be considered, I guess, Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network shows, which I know very little about, generally speaking. But you do some older stuff, which we'll talk about as well. I know when I was a kid, I was born in 1965, so I'm 56. I remember that on television when I was a kid, you would see the old Popeye cartoons from the 1930s, where you'd see Felix the Cat or Bugs Bunny, all that stuff. And in a way, by watching that stuff, I got to sort of know what the world was like years before me. When you see a Fat Albert cartoon or a Charlie Brown cartoon, do you get a sense of being transported back in time to where your parents were growing up?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I learned. I think the most recent time I felt that was when I was watching the Little Lulu show. I was watching a bunch of like the Little Lulu cartoons, and the way the kids dress, the way like the neighborhood is, the way like everybody behaves, like it was kind of like a little time machine kind of thing, I would say.
Yeah, you certainly probably have that artistic temperament, and I know in listening to your videos, one of the things that I enjoy about them is that you'll be talking like you'll just be sort of rambling along the way people will talk normally, and then you'll come to something, maybe something about Charlie Brown in a movie, something about the Fat Albert kids being live action actors playing them, but recognizing that they're based on cartoons. These little things that I think it was the Fat Albert one you talked about your grandfather, and it's just interesting the way you're making connections about things. So let me just talk about the Fat Albert the video and the Fat Albert cartoon overall. This is 2021, and you know everyone now in the world knows about Bill Cosby and his personal stuff, but I don't want to really talk about that. For me, as a kid, even though I'm white and even though I was born in the mid-60s, that was the only show with cartoons that dealt with inner city life that I grew up in. I grew up on the Brooklyn-Queens border in New York. I know you're from New Jersey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up with on one side, on the Brooklyn side, it was mostly black kids, and the white kids were on the other side of the border. So I played with a lot of black kids, and we played in junkyards, and we played, I think it was Weird Harold who used to play like he played, what was a mannequin, the bars of the mannequin or something like that. And I, that was my world. I was far more familiar with that than Yogi Bear or the Flintstones or anything like that. So tell me a little bit, how did you get into Fat Albert? Because to me, it's the best thing Bill Cosby ever did. I never liked his live shows. I thought Cliff Huxtable was kind of corny and whatnot. But I love Fat Albert, and I love those kids because despite them being black characters, they were more like me and a lot of the kids that I grew up with. So how did you get into Fat Albert? Was your parents or did you stumble upon yourself?
Yeah, it was mainly my grandfather, because my grandfather, like once he realized like that I was into animation, and like I wasn't like sports and stuff wasn't really my thing. He kind of like used a lot of stuff that he remembered, and tried to show that to me as well. Like you talked about Popeye, we watched a lot of Popeye, like for sure we watched a lot of Popeye.
The old ones from the 30s are so much better.
Yeah, no, I love, my favorite one is when he meets Sinbad, Popeye.
Oh yeah, that's the classic one. Yeah,
gorgeous.
Yeah.
I was watching it a couple months ago. It's such a beautiful looking cartoon.
Yeah.
So yeah, Fat Albert was one of those things where he was just kind of like he would, but it wasn't, by that point when I was a kid, it wasn't in syndication anymore. So he would just kind of tell me about it, right? But when the movie came out, they kind of started doing this thing, because that was 2004. They kind of started doing this thing where every time a movie like that would come out, they would kind of maybe release some DVDs or play them a little bit on television. So that's how I caught it. So I had a little relationship with the cartoon right before we saw the film. So I think my connection to the franchise does, like, it is kind of centered around that film. When I got older, I looked into, because like you were saying, right, they did a lot of like really interesting stuff that's even like, I don't want to say you can't do it today, but I don't think anybody would. You know what I mean? Like a lot of really serious inner city stuff, talking about like a lot of like really uncomfortable conversations, and they dealt with them in a really nice way with these like inner city kids. Yeah, I think, but yeah, to answer your question, definitely it branches off. My connection to the series branches off from the film.
Yeah, I know with those characters, and just I remember when the movie came out. I didn't actually see the movie, but I've seen clips since watching some of the clips after seeing your video. And it's interesting because it does seem like some of the performances are really good, and there seems to be in modern culture that anything that is sincere, or anything that is sweet, or anything that tries to show the lighter or better side of life is looked down on as like corny or crappy. Everything has to be dark. I mean, let's update Fat Albert and make him a serial killer or something. This is how Hollywood would do it. So do you think that Fat Albert specifically could work today, or do you think that that's sort of like a time, it's sealed in its own time?
I think that's the thing. I don't think it would be impossible to produce, but I don't think it would be popular.
No.
Because there's like there's another cartoon that airs on Cartoon Network right now. It's called Craig of the Creek, and it's kind of it's not exactly the same thing. It's kind of like it's a semi fantasy version, right? But it's still kids that like deal with real things. It's just kind of blown out of proportion, and you see a lot of their like active imaginations. I think the last thing that was super close to Fat Albert was, there was a Nickelodeon cartoon called Hey Arnold, which was borderline the exact same thing. It was just inner city kids dealing with inner city problems. There were characters like would get mugged on their way home from school, like that kind of thing. Now, like, not a lot of people would talk about. But I don't think I don't know. I'm not sure if something like that would be appreciated today. You know, like in a world where we're just kind of looking at like bigger scope stories, um, and everything like that. I feel like the conversations would be important to have, but there might need to be some kind of fantastical element or something for it to like really blow and have as big an impact as it did back then.
Yeah, you mentioned the video that you did about the black cartoon, I guess, subgenre of cartoons. And again, other than Fat Albert, which is, going back 50 years almost, I'm not familiar with what was on the Cartoon Network or other networks. How big is cartoons, or are cartoons within black households today? Has it gotten more popular? And what are the two or three major cartoons that you grew up with and a kid today would grow up with?
Um, so it's weird. The weird thing is that cartoons have kind of always been like just kind of like popular. They've always kind of been like a thing, like in black households in the black community. It's just kind of it's strange because we wouldn't have at a certain point we wouldn't have a lot of characters, right? Like you said, there was like Fat Albert, and I know like Jackson 5 had a
Yeah,
cartoon
yeah,
back
oh yeah.
then. Um, there's stuff like there was kind of short-lived stuff like Rickety Rocket, but it was all really spaced out, and we didn't really have a lot of opportunity to kind of see ourselves and kind of seek characters to put ourselves in. And that's not saying you can't relate to a character that you don't look like, because that's just kind of not true. Because I relate to like a lot of the Peanuts characters and
Hmm.
everything like that that aren't Franklin. So it's but there is kind of like a security in seeing a character. You see kids today kind of you see parents record videos of kids today coming out of the theater with a cartoon film that had a black character in it, and they're like pointing to the poster and like, "Mommy, that looks like me," and that kind of stuff is really validating. Um, and it's weird because you could talk to a bunch of different black kids that grew up on cartoons, and they'll kind of give you different answers, especially today. I remember growing up, the Proud Family was a really big one. That was the one created by Bruce W. Smith, the animator at Disney. Um, it was a Disney Channel cartoon about just kind of like a black family. Um, I really was just kind of the gist of it. It was just kind of like a normal black sitcom that you would see on any network television, but it was animated. And when I spoke to Bruce, he spoke about wanting it to kind of have that feeling. He didn't want it to be overly bouncy, overly cartoony. They still do a lot of really cartoony things, but he wanted it to feel like one of those sitcoms that you would watch.
Hmm.
Because it's possible to do that kind of stuff in animation. You can do anything in it. So, um,
It's funny that you mentioned the Jackson 5 cartoon. I remember that J5 and a heart. And
yeah.
but the thing is, and you mentioned, I think, when talking about the Simpsons and Family Guy, you mentioned the Cleveland Show and how, in a sense, the Cleveland Show. I think that the main character is voiced by a white guy, or
Yeah.
was, and it other than having brown, the characters being brown, there's not much blackness there. And the same thing I was thinking, the Jackson 5. I don't know if you're aware of it. During that same time, the early '70s, there was a show called about the Osmond family, Donnie and Marie Osmond. They had the Osmond family. They were a white middle class family that was big in the late '60s, early '70s. And the Jackson 5 and the Osmond cartoon shows were basically the same thing, with the family. There's some villain on the loose this week, and they solve the mystery or whatever. It's sort of like Scooby Doo. Um,
Yeah.
but is there a problem, do you think, with uh, animation here in the U.S. at least? Maybe elsewhere it's different, but in the U.S., you think a problem with animation is that character that you can't be too black, or you have to make everything comic. Are there any cartoons, whether with black characters or not, that deal with drama? Because I go back to Fat Albert, and yes, while technically I guess you could say it was a comedy, it also dealt with things like someone overdosing, or and you don't,
Mhm.
at least in other cartoons of my era, you didn't really deal with that.
Nah, I first of all I want to agree with you because that was something that I've been thinking about a lot. Is that there is kind of to a degree with certain things you do kind of feel like a censored blackness, right? Kind of
Uh,
palatable. I think the latest thing that I kind of felt that way about was Pixar released a film called Soul,
uh,
and that it kind of I kind of got that a little bit from it. And I can't really put my finger on why. I've been thinking about it for a lot, but it just kind of it gave me that it gave me that perception, and that kind of comes from right like I think a lot of time like networks and executives and stuff they kind of fear that this stuff will be kind of alien to people not of the culture. Like again, talking about the Proud Family, when I spoke to Bruce W. Smith, he was saying about how when they tested their pilot, they didn't show it to. It wasn't like a mixed race of kids that like tested the pilot. It was a bunch of white kids, and they all didn't like it because they didn't like, oh, the grandmother's too loud, or like, I don't know what's going on with the dad, or that kind of thing. And it's like, I don't know. At a certain point, um, shows like that are important because it shows that these kind of dynamics exist, right? Like you would have to see, you would have to see it to believe it. You would have to see it to understand it, and that's really what's important about like creating these like family dynamics and stuff like that. And that's what's important about just like the drama and the inner city stuff that stuff like Fat Albert would do.
yeah.
And like I said, I don't think cartoons are is heavy on that aspect. At least not for kids. I don't think they're as heavy with that. Um,
Well, that
really, like a lot of the satirical stuff is like what Aaron McGruder was doing with the Boondocks and stuff like that.
yeah,
But
that was a good that was a good not cartoon comic strip originally it started as. But that's a problem with the larger culture. I mean, it's been 75 years since television came into this world here in the U.S. after World War II, and there still hasn't been, as far as I know, a successful black family drama. I mean, yeah, you'll have Empire, but that's really like a soap opera, you know.
mm-hmm.
Not it's sort of like the old show Good Times with J.J. Walker, but if it had been a drama about a family struggling to meet the
Right,
bills
right.
and how they deal with this, that, and the other thing. I wanted to ask you though, and I don't recall if I saw it on your channel, and then we'll take a break. Uh, a few years ago, there was a big uproar about the British guy. I forget his name, the black fellow who they wanted to cast as James Bond, or someone suggested. And then I remember about a year or so ago when, oh, I forget her. There's a very beautiful young black gal who was cast to play the Little Mermaid in a movie. Now,
Oh
what
yeah.
was ridiculous to me is people are bitching about this, and it's like, well, number one, it's a fictional character. Mermaids don't exist.
Right.
They have oceans around. Africa is surrounded by oceans, so why couldn't there be a black mermaid? But it's like these people are so scared of their little domain. We can't have a black character come in. You're not asking her to play Napoleon Bonaparte. She's not pretend. I mean, she's playing a fucking
Yeah.
mermaid. What do you think when you see these kinds of silly things about people getting all upset about a black mermaid in a cartoon?
I don't know, man. It's so weird because it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't erase. Like when if Chloe is Ariel in the Little Mermaid, it doesn't erase the 1989 one, right? Like it isn't like Disney's gonna throw it in the vault and it just doesn't exist anymore. And yeah, like I agree. It's really just it's a very weird thing to be upset about. If anything, I don't know. I'm like a really weird uh animation purist, so I just kind of I don't like the fact that Disney does this in general and just kind of redoes the films in general.
Yeah,
I don't like that. But if we're gonna do it, do something different, right? Like if you look at like The Lion King, it was just the same movie,
yeah.
but they just made them. like CG lines. It was the exact same thing. At least here, they're trying different things with the cast, trying to make it look different, trying to give it a different feel, a different sound. Because the actress that they cast is the recording artist,
Yeah.
so it's gonna have a completely different sound.
Yeah. Um, uh, Before we move on to talk about animation in general, because I don't want to just talk about black things, but one of the things that I did notice when you click on videos, there were other videos with similar topics, and I remember when I watched, I think it might have been the Fat Albert video, it might have been the How to Black video. This is about a month or two ago. Another fellow was reviewing the same thing, and he mentioned your channel, and he was saying, I'm not as good as Toonrific Tariq's analysis, but I don't say the word nigger a lot. And I was like, that I just find, because the fellow is white, and I just find that always funny when you hear like some white person getting offended about something that's within the cultural zeitgeist of a particular community. Have you gotten a lot of negative feedback though about, because you'll use it casually, say, oh, my nigga Charlie Brown or something. What is your response to people who would criticize you for saying using the quote unquote N word, as white people like to call it?
I don't know. I get it a lot. I got it a lot on that Boy Named Charlie Brown video. I think that's the first time like it started to become a problem. Um, I guess, and it's weird because I feel like they say that to me because the word makes them uncomfortable or something, or maybe Charlie Brown is like too sacred to where I shouldn't be like saying it in that fashion. But you brought it up earlier, but I always kind of felt like my videos were conversational, right?
Yeah.
They're really personal. It sounds like you're having a talk with somebody that you know, and it's because I hate the idea of code switching. I hate the fact that like when black people get in certain settings, they have to feel as though they have to code switch and like
Yeah.
talk a different way, talk a certain way because they're worried of how they'll be seen. So when I realized I was gonna do the channel and take it seriously, I kind of stepped back and I said, okay, if you're gonna do this, you have to do it like how you speak, and that's how I speak.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away from anything poignant that I may have said. The thesis is still there. It's just maybe wrapped around in slang or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's still there.
And that's the thing that I know first drew me to the first 3 or 4 videos that I heard from you or watched of you, was that you did have that conversational tone. It's like what's going on in your mind, and then you could almost. It didn't seem to me as it was scripted. One of the things I hate sometimes about some videos, even if they're really well wrought, an analysis of Goodfellas or something, is that the points are scripted so much, and there isn't a sense that there's a real person there. With your videos, you get the sense that, oh, here I'm on this journey, and it might take 3 or 4 minutes, and then you get to the point, and bam, and then it's sort of like it's dropping the hammer, and you nail, let's say, a point about Charlie Brown or Fat Albert or whatever it might be, that seems obvious. And I think that's one of the things that I think, for me, says that you really have a good insight into the human condition. And if you, hopefully, we'll talk a little bit later about your future plans, but if you are ever doing a cartoon, it would probably be good because you have that ability. I can see it in these videos.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So one of the things you mentioned earlier, Tariq, was, and I didn't know anything about this, was that there seems to have been 20 or so years ago a Little Lulu cartoon. Now, as a kid growing up, Little Lulu was corny even back like in the 60s or 70s. And I'm thinking, why the hell did they make a cartoon about Little Lulu? And was it in one of those videos? There's another little girl character, Little something or other, that's sort of a knockoff of Little Lulu. I can't remember.
Audrey.
Little Audrey, right? Yeah. So, how the hell did you find that cartoon, and is it any good?
I love the Little Lulu show, man. I think it's dope. When I was a kid, it was just kind of on. My grandparents had the HBO package, and HBO had a set of cartoons they would play on HBO Family, and the Little Lulu show was one of them. They had a Stuart Little animated series, like they had one based on the Harold and the Purple Crayon show.
Ah.
Book. I mean, I have no idea why they decide. When you go back, like you said, you go back and look at those cartoons, and they're super corny. Not only are they corny, they're kind of bad. Like the older, like
I think they were Terry
the ones by
Tunes.
Famous Studios.
Did they go? Oh, it was Famous. Okay, I know they were Terry Tunes. I thought they
That's,
might be Terry Tunes, but Famous Studio. Okay.
yeah, they're like. What is the thing? I guess you kind of go back and look at the famous cartoons in general. Like a lot of I don't like a lot of the Popeyes. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like I feel like they kind of cornified a lot of them, and Lulu was one of those that caught it. So I have no idea why they ended up doing it, but I think it's the best version of those characters. It
Mhm.
was I think that's 1995. But I think it's really fun. I think it's really sweet. It's not exactly Peanuts,
Mhm.
but because it doesn't have the the existential thought
Yeah.
or like the thought provoking stuff. It is just really simple, really fun stuff. But I like those cartoons. I think they're dope. Better than
Yeah.
the older stuff.
Well, you mentioned the early Popeye cartoons. So, what did you think about sort of the classic era of Disney in the 30s and 40s? I would always preferred Warner Brothers. Give me Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck over Mickey
Same,
Mouse any
yeah.
day. So, uh, yeah. What was some of your favorite cartoons? If you got in your day, were you able to see a lot of those cartoons? Because a lot of them have been now censored for some of their racial stereotypes, not only blacks but
Hmm.
against the Japanese during World War II. What are some of your thoughts on the classic Warner Brothers cartoons?
I love the classic Warner Brothers cartoons. Actually, um, this is gonna sound really weird considering when I grew up, but old time character that I grew up on was actually Felix the Cat.
Oh yeah,
I watched a lot of Felix the Cat. I
what
thought
was
Felix
that?
the
The
Cat
one
was
from the '50s or from the silent era?
the silent era
Okay,
ones. The ones where it's just ink and paint. Like there's nothing
yeah,
else. There's no color. He doesn't speak.
yeah,
Like those. Because what would happen? I think a lot of those cartoons ended up falling in public domain.
yeah.
So we would go to like a store maybe downtown or something like that, and it'll just be like this like DVD for like $1 or $2, and it
Mhm.
would have just like a couple cartoons on it. Maybe it'll be called like Felix and Friends or something like that, and
Yeah,
it'll have Felix and a bunch of characters that he didn't meet. It would just be just like a compilation DVD,
yeah.
and they would sell a lot of these, and I had a lot of them. And every time I saw Felix, I picked them up. That's how I ended up seeing like the older Lulus too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I agree. The Disney ones, they're a little too whimsical for me, man.
Mhm.
Like they don't.
Yeah.
The Warner Brothers is just there's so much punch. There's a lot going on. The jokes are a mile a minute. They're really frantic and they're really fun.
Hmm.
And you can. That's not to say you can't see the pen in the hand in the Disney cartoons, but there's like a certain craftsmanship to those Warner Brothers. Um, like all the timing and stuff like that. Like it's really powerful. Like those cartoons are really good.
Yeah, that brings me to the computer animation. One of the things that I've noticed with kids who've grown up with computer animation, you just mentioned it. There seem to when I look at classic animation, and I'm not talking the 1950s with the crap Hanna
And
Barbera,
Barbarian.
yeah. But when you look at those classic ones, you get more of a human expression in Bugs or Daffy than you would get in like Shrek, I think. And I'm not trying to put it down. Things evolve, things change, and whatnot. But I don't think computers have gotten that personal touch of a Tex Avery, say, or Chuck Jones.
Nah, because that's the thing. I think now they're kind of leaning towards that, right? Because I don't know if you saw it, but in 2015, I think there was a Peanuts movie that came out, and
Yeah,
it was CG and everything like that. But they worked really, really hard to make it look like Schultz or Melendez drew it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? They because what they do is they kind of morph the models so they aren't as solid. You know what I mean? So like they are like more slick. If a storyboard artist draws a really expressive face, they'll try to mimic that face on the screen so that you can get that human touch. And because everybody draws characters different, and that's what made those so cool is that you would you can visibly see the difference between a Tex Avery and a I don't want to a first feeling, right?
Yeah,
Like you could visibly see the difference between like a Tex Avery and a Chuck Jones
yeah,
cartoon, like down to the very way that Bugs is designed, and they're trying to get to that with CG animation, and
yeah.
it's happening. It's happening slowly. They're making a lot of looser, cartoonier stuff based on that. Um, a lot of really stylized stuff because at one point everything was kind of uniform. It was kind of like a template design, you know, bigger eyes, this skinny
Yeah.
body. I don't know, like a certain kind of nose that they would put on the models or something like that. But they're trying to get there because I think people realize like how important it is for your things, your cartoons to be distinct. And
Yeah. A few years ago, one of the shows that I did in this series was on the demise of Saturday morning cartoons. You're too young to remember,
mm,
but Saturday mornings for someone my age, there was all the Hanna-Barbera. There was a lot of cartoons. There was a thing called Schoolhouse Rock where you'd learn about history and mathematics in a 3-minute cartoon with songs and whatnot. Have you? Are you as familiar with some of the classic Saturday morning cartoons from the 50s, 60s, 70s? Because I'm sure you've probably heard of Bullwinkle and Rocky, the
oh,
Bullwinkle show.
absolutely, yeah.
They were some really classic stuff. Underdog comes to mind.
hmm
What did you think about some of them? Because it seems to me there was a period from maybe the mid 60s through the mid 90s where cartoons were just dumb. They were just dumb. Um, uh, have cartoons gotten smarter, more like Bullwinkle, in the last 20 some years since you've been around?
Yeah, definitely. I would say so because I think you're absolutely right. I think it's when Hanna Barbera kind of realized like okay, I think we could just kind of make these for kids, and not only can we make them for kids, but we can make them really fast because we're doing less drawings. So like you did kind of lose a lot of the wit because you watch Rocky and Bullwinkle now, and it's so frantic. It's like jokes a mile a minute, and it's so clever and it's so funny. Um, and you get that now. I will say that for sure. Like a lot of these cartoons are really funny and like and really smart and really clever. They started out kind of see when you bring up just like that gap, I think of like the '80s where just everything was just kind of
He-Man and,
toys.
and He-Man. And one time I ordered a TV show and they sent the wrong DVD. I saw, what was it called? Thundercats. And I was like, oh, this stuff is bad. I was like, what? There was everyone. There was Lino. There was Tiger, and the black character was Panthro. And he was voiced by, I forget who. I think it might have been the guy from the Cosby Show who played Cosby's father or something. Did Panthro, and it was just so bad, so bad.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, well, I'm not a fan of
yeah,
that era where everything was just like the toy stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so let me turn to one of the first videos I saw of you. It might have been the first or second one, and that's about the movie A Boy Called Charlie Brown. Now, I was
hmm
born in '65, and I think the first movie that I ever saw in a movie theater was either the 5-year anniversary release of a movie called The Sound of Music with Julie
Wow.
Andrews, or it was A Boy Named Charlie Brown. I don't know which one I saw first, but I remember watching and seeing Lucy and Linus and Charlie Brown up on that hill. This is now over 50
Wow.
years ago. And a big screen. And I remember there was sort of the psychedelic with the bopping lights and whatnot. And it was just very weird. And it's such a good movie. And again, it's been a couple of months since I saw that video. I thought your video gave a lot of insights. And I think it comes down to the moment where Charlie is defeated and just lying in bed and Linus comes to him. Tell me a bit about what drew you to that movie, how you got, how you first saw it, and that Linus moment.
So I watched that film a lot, like as a kid. We used to have the VHS. Um, I used to watch it all the time, and I always kind of remember that that was the one that I really appreciated, right? Because when you talk to anybody about Peanuts, if they end up bringing up the Peanuts movie, they're probably bringing up Snoopy Come Home, the one where Snoopy like leaves and goes back to his farm. And I think that one's fine, but I don't think they ever get like as smart or as poignant as that one.
Yeah.
And not only is it smart and poignant, but it's like literal art. I don't talk about it in the video, but they do just like this kind of Fantasia stuff. They'll just kind of stop the film and stop
Yeah.
the story and just do a bunch of music
Well,
stuff.
Schroeder does something. He's playing Beethoven, and it goes all whack. And then is it Snoopy? Is he like in Rock? It's not Rockefeller Center. No, maybe he's not skating. Maybe I'm mixing up. But
you're right.
He is skating. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, that one's in there too. It's like they do stuff like that, and it really is beautiful.
Yeah.
And that moment I think I might have really realized like what Linus was saying when I was a teenager, and the fact that I don't know, I think about it a lot, and I can't think of any animated film that does it the way that this film does, where it's just about losing.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't get what he wants, and there isn't some kind of reveal at the end to prove that he actually did win a spelling bee or anything like that. He just loses. And the fact that Linus is just kind of like, there is nothing you can do to change that. There's nothing you can do to go back to fix it, but all you can do is move on. And I think it's really, really powerful. And I've never seen anything like it. That's what really drew me to it, is that I've never seen anything like it. Charlie Brown always kind of does stuff. The Peanuts characters in general, the franchise, they always do stuff that like were first in animation. They were the first to like quote the Bible, and I think they were the first to do failure and keep doing it, but not only failure but persistence, because that's what Charlie Brown has. And you see him every single time he has the football. He's like, okay, it's this time. This is the one. She won't pull it away this time. Or he keeps doing the baseball games. It's like, okay, like this is gonna be the game that we win. This is gonna be the game where we succeed.
Yeah.
And we finally, but he never gives up. He always kind of had that persistence. That's what his character was. And the fact that he's never been so close to succeeding before, and when he finally gets there, it's ripped right away from him. That's what kind of breaks him. That's what kind of tells him like, okay, I don't think I can do this. This is what's gonna keep happening to me. I don't think I can do this. And like Linus isn't really any better. Linus comes over to his house and tells him like, hey, we had a ball game today and we won. It's the first game we won all season. It's like, you didn't have to tell him that. Like, why did you tell him that?
Well, you know, that the whole Charlie Brown animation, both on TV and in the films, is often slagged upon as not being, you know, as slick as some others. But they did some interesting things in that movie. The one that sticks out with me is when Charlie Brown tries to kick the football. It's in two boxes. Lucy's holding the ball. Charlie's there. Yeah. Then you see him coming closer, and then they actually merge into one panel as he's so you see them. It's like you know, with modern watching a football where you'll have two cameras following it. It's but they did it with animation, and that may not be as visually stunning as say Fantasia 30 years earlier, but it's still something that showed that they were thinking that this is animation and we can do something.
Mm-hmm. And I think it like, because it was their first film, and I think it was them really wanting to expand these characters and expand that world and kind of do a lot of really just visually interesting stuff. Because that's one of my favorite shots. Like I love that shot. I use it a lot. Like I incorporated a theme song in my videos now, and I use that shot in it because I just think it's brilliant. The fact that they do that with the boxes and everything. And even then later, like the reason she does that is because she's like, oh, I'm gonna show you it again on instant replay. Yeah. And he's like going in slow motion. Yeah. They don't cop out. They draw every frame, and he's really going in slow motion. And it's like, I always think though, I think the Peanuts cartoons are gorgeous. Like I think everything Bill Melendez was able to do with those characters, make them flow and feel solid and feel real. Like I've never seen anything like it.
So let me just talk a little bit about the YouTube channel, and then we'll get back to the animation in a bit. You have a video called The Lost Videos of Toonrific Tariq. Were these videos taken down because you there were copyright claims, or was it censorship because of quote unquote using the N word? What was the reason these videos became lost?
They were copyright claims. The YouTube bot, it kind of gets you in really weird spots. There's all these kind of regulations you have to follow for how long you can play a clip, depending on which company it is, depending on if they care enough or something like that. And those are two videos that got by it. It really gets difficult with like the Fox stuff. One of those videos is about the Seth MacFarlane cartoon American Dad, and that one it's kind of. So what I did was when I repurposed the videos, I just kind of cut them differently and played around with them. So I'm using my knowledge now, so I wouldn't get caught up again.
Yeah, I know. Years ago, 5-6 years ago, maybe my 20th video that I did about public domain films. I used clips from 5 public domain films here in the U.S. and some asshole in Germany puts in a copyright claim that it's in Germany. It's like then don't fucking watch it in Germany. What the hell? So let me get back then, since you mentioned the Seth MacFarlane and stuff, and you have 3 or 4 videos where you're basically dealing with the quote unquote Simpsons versus I guess you call it the MacFarlane American Dad and especially Family Guy. In your earlier video, you were much harder on Family Guy, and then a couple of years later, some of your later videos, you seem to have developed a greater appreciation for Family Guy. So tell me a little bit about how you changed your mind and about that. And you, if I recall, you seem to favor American Dad as the better show than Family Guy. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think American Dad is the better, better in terms of storytelling, right? Like I think American Dad focuses more on its characters and like actually takes them seriously and like tries to develop them and stuff like that. But Family Guy is a weird one because I loved it when I was a kid, which I think kind of any kid does if they were around for that, because it was just kind of like the one you weren't supposed to watch, and it was really random and it was really funny. But when I got older, I kind of stepped back and I was like, I don't like what they're doing. They're like the animation's weird. They're not really they're contradicting themselves in this episode and that episode and everything like that. But what ended up happening was in the midst of the virus last year, I kind of was isolated from like a lot of like my loved ones, and it really was kind of just like a dark period, and it was hard to watch anything. But I was listening to a podcast, and the guy on the podcast said that they felt similar at one point, but what helped was watching like earlier episodes of Family Guy. So I kind of was like, okay, maybe I'll try that. So I did, and I ran out of earlier ones, and I kind of kept going until I just ended up watching all of it somehow. There's like 19 seasons, and I've seen all of them. And I think in watching it, I kind of noticed a lot of things and noticed like the show's function and what exactly its purpose is. Because we kind of watch shows and we believe the characters, right? Like when you kind of put this show on for us, we kind of suspend our disbelief. We look at The Simpsons and we say, this is the dad, this is the mom, this is how he treats her, and like this is how these characters are. But in Family Guy, they'll kind of treat each other one way one time and treat each other another way another time. And when you think about the theme song and how they're like doing this Broadway thing, and they rip the clothes off and they have the hats on and the suits and everything like that. Like you kind of realize like, oh, these are just kind of like actors. They're kind of just putting on a show, where it just kind of it's loose and they do whatever they want with it. And I think it's interesting. I don't think that it's like groundbreaking or anything like that, but I do think it's interesting, and I think it's an interesting thing to watch happen. And like, I don't know, the fact that I think in watching media and critiquing it for a living, I've come to appreciate the fact that sometimes there's things that you don't have to do that with. Um, Sometimes there's things that you can just kind of put on and enjoy. And I think that's the function of it. It's like we're gonna come here for this half hour, or at least we're gonna use these characters, and then that's it. It's not like an American Dad or The Simpsons where they try to hit you with maybe like an emotion or say something like really interesting about Lisa or about Stan or something like that. It's like no, these are just we're just gonna put on the show for half an hour.
Yeah, and you did a really good video about the episode where Brian woos an old lady, and that's maybe 12, 15 years old, because I do remember that when was, as I've gotten older, I lose interest in television or sports and whatnot. As you get older, I find myself trying to read more, and I'm more into the arts. So, but that was a very good video. And if I recall, you seem to be much higher on later Simpsons than a lot of people. Most people will say the first 5, 6, 7 years was the quote unquote golden age, and they've been running on fumes for almost 25 years since. Do you think that's true, and how long can they go on? I mean, are they going to milk this cow till the udders fall off?
I think that's true. I think that I'll go as far as to say the first 9 or 10 seasons of The Simpsons are like some of the best television. Season 7 of The Simpsons is my favorite season of television I've ever seen. But I also feel like there isn't a season of The Simpsons with 100% bad episodes in it. And I think when The Simpsons gets bad, it's just bad for The Simpsons because the show is like, you got to think about the pedestal that it was on because it was nothing like it before. Like it's just really, really good, and it still holds to being like you could watch any of those older ones and they'll still be just as good, just as heartfelt, just as funny as they were before. But we're comparing The Simpsons to The Simpsons, and the fact that they've been on so long is definitely not nowhere near as good as it was before. But it's not. I don't think it's bad television. I think that's what it is. I think we're so connected to these characters in that world that we kind of don't like that they're stretching them out, and we just kind of write it off as bad TV. But I don't think The Simpsons has gotten a bad TV. I think they've done really bad episodes, but I don't think they've even now. I don't think they're like bad television.
So, Tariq, I want to just take a slight detour here. You had just briefly mentioned, and I just saw a couple of your videos, I think, have over 1 million hits. Are you able to make some money doing this then, doing your videos?
Yeah, no, this is what I do. This is what I do for a living.
Oh, okay. And so, but long term, you just don't want to be on YouTube, I would assume. Do you have an idea for 2 or 3 cartoon series of your own, and what, you don't have to give away your secrets, but what is the general idea that you'd like to do 10, 15 years from now?
Yeah, I do. I do have a couple of ideas that I like toss around. Every once in a while, I like write a pilot script or something like that. Really, I do. I think if I were to break into the industry, I would want to start out as like a storyboard artist or something like that. But my long term goal, if I ever do get a series or franchises, I want to bridge the gap. I want to bridge the gap of the people that, because I like we talked about earlier about animation and just like the Black community in general, and like while like there's like people that are my age, right, that kind of see it and appreciate different shows or whatever. There are still some people that are just like, I don't really feel like watching a cartoon. They won't like a lot of some podcasts that I listen to. They won't discuss animation. If somebody brings up a cartoon, they'll probably laugh or like roll their eyes. And I want to bridge that gap. I want to do like one of those kind of shows, like a drama that you would see on ABC or NBC or something like that. But I want to do it with Black animated characters. I want to do something like that, so where if somebody that feels that way about animation sees it, they'll go, "Oh, they're actually like doing interesting stuff here, and they're not like stuff isn't blowing up, and they're not just trying to be funny, but this is just like that other thing that I was watching on HBO." You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, do you consider yourself more of a writer for tunes or a drawer? Do you want to do both?
I wanna do both. I lean towards, especially because of the videos, is I lean towards writing a lot because in watching a lot of stuff for these things, I've developed this kind of thing where like the videos kind of become mini films. Like they'll start to have beginnings, middles, and ends. They'll start to have theming, and I'll do like callbacks. Like I try a lot of that stuff in like the Fat Albert one, in the Charlie Brown one, where I do a lot of callbacks and stuff. But I think I'm closer to the writer side of things, but I would want to do both.
So, one of the things with cartoons, especially when I was growing up, was the theme song. So, the two theme songs that stick the most with me was the Underdog's theme song when
Yeah,
the cry goes out for underdog, underdog, and then of course Fat Albert, it's Fat Albert,
that's really good.
and I'm gonna sing a song for you. I could probably sit there, and we're gonna do the thing or two. We got it
Yeah.
with me and all the gang, learning from each other while we do our thing. Nah, 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 gonna have a good time. And so those two stand out for me. What are your two or three favorite cartoon theme songs, and would you give a few seconds if you can sing them?
Yeah. Um, I think it's because I've been watching it a lot, but I really appreciate the Family Guy theme song.
Uh-huh.
I found out in reading they have an art book for Family Guy. I found out that like Seth MacFarlane and Walter Murphy recorded the Family Guy theme song in Walter Murphy's house. He just kind of called a bunch of friends over, and uh, they kind of just brought their instruments and recorded the instruments one by one. They didn't even go at the same time, like, and I really like that. And I don't know, it's really big in Broadway. Um, there's a there's a later Disney cartoon called Pepper and Ann. And I really like that theme song a lot. That might be my number one. It goes, who's that girl? What's her name? Is she cool? Is she lame? Oh, you're talking about what's her name? Pepper Ann. Is she lame? Is she cool? Is she breaking every rule? Is she everybody's fool? Pepper Ann. I like it's really like
Yeah.
the artist. She has like a really like rough voice. It's like, is she lame? Is she cool? Like I love that one. That's my favorite one.
So we've talked basically about American animation. I just want to briefly, before we end, talk about foreign animation. First, the obvious East Asia anime. Are you into anime? And if so, what are your thoughts on it?
I'm not as into it as a lot of my friends are. They've been showing me like a lot of the different films and everything like that, and I really appreciate a lot of those. I just watched something called Your Name,
Yeah.
a film that was made a couple years ago that I really really like. I thought it was really well put together. I think those films um, and just kind of generalizing, I think like they're really really gorgeous and what they do with it, just like hand drawn and continuous motion. You think like the Studio Ghibli movies, like Spirited Away or something like that. And um, but I'm not as heavy into it as a lot of my peers are, even though they want me to be.
You know, it's interesting. I just dawned on me because you mentioned the Lion King earlier. I don't know. There was a video that I saw about a year or so ago on YouTube where there was Japanese animation in the 60s and 70s. The three biggest cartoons were one was called Gigantor, the space age robot. I don't know if you ever saw that. It would be Gigantor,
Yeah,
Gigantor, the space age robot, and then there was Go Speed Racer, Go Speed Race about this kid who drove the car. But there was one called Kimber the White Lion, and
yeah.
this guy did a video where he showed the Lion King is 90% a ripoff of that. I don't know if you ever get a chance to see some of the, or if you can Google Kimber the White Lion episodes. I mean, Disney totally ripped it off.
Yeah, I saw. So I knew about that. I knew about that. They've been like theorizing about that for years. Um, but I so I think it might have been it was last year, a couple months, not too long ago. I might have been in the middle of the summer. There was another guy who did a video and it's like it has to be like 2 hours long, and he debunked all of that,
Oh
and
yeah.
it was really weird because he starts to talk about how the people that upload those videos, they kind of manipulate it, like they kind of put the two images together or something like that and say like, yeah, see, look, they look similar, but then you realize like they're in like completely different contexts, and like they
Well, I can tell you,
because
having grown up watching Kimba the White Lion, when I saw the Lion King, I immediately thought of Kimba. So I don't know. I mean, but I just know that that immediately came to me. I just wanted to hear your thoughts. But let's go to the other side of the world then. European animation, especially during the Cold War, back when the Soviet Union was around. Uh, Eastern Europe made a lot of interesting animation, and I think in one of my emails I mentioned to you. And if you ever get a chance to watch it or review it or do even a 5 or 10 minute video, there's this really weird but very compelling cartoon called Fantastic Planet. It's about
yeah, I've been told about that.
okay, it's about these giant robot-like creatures with big eyes, and the human race are running around like ants, and they eventually overthrow the robots, or they live in peace and they go to the moon of the planet. And it's one of those. It's just a very odd but engaging video. So if I could make a request, if you ever get a chance to watch it, I'd love to see a video or your thoughts on that. And have you seen any other Eastern European Cold War animation? Because some of it is really weird but very interesting.
Nah, I haven't, but I have heard about Fantastic Planet. I think isn't that the only animated film on Criterion, or is it just like one of the only ones?
It may be now, but oh no, probably there's more that has come now, but it might have been the first one. I forget the name of the guy. I think it was a Czechoslovakian, which Czechoslovakia itself doesn't exist. It's two countries now, but I believe it was a Czech film. But yeah, I just wanted to make you aware of that. But anyway, it's been great talking to you. If you is there anything else that you'd just like to say about yourself or your channel? Because I think you know I'm going to follow your channel, and hopefully hopefully you do get one day to put your own cartoons out there on some other medium other than YouTube. So is there anything finally you'd like to say? Because I'm going to link to Toonrific Tariq below this video, and anyone who's enjoyed listening to you can follow your channel there. But is there anything else you want to say?
Nah, we pretty much covered all the bases, and I really appreciate this. It's been really cool. Thank you for having me. It's
Okay,
been
well,
great.
it's been very good to speak to you, so thanks a lot.